Good morning, and welcome to our last installment of Webi Wednesdays. This topic, demonstration number 7, is Take Control, using input controls to speed up data analysis, presented by CNE, your business intelligence specialists. First, we're going to start with the demonstration. The topics are presented below. Following this, we're going to visit CNE.com for a special offer. Let's begin, shall we? As always, we start with Web Intelligence Rich Client, and we'd like to point out that some of these features are found in what is now the current most recent Service Pack release of Web Intelligence, Service Pack 3 of version 4.1 of Web Intelligence. If you're not sure which version you have, simply move to the top right corner, click on the Help icon, and choose About. And what you'll find is the Service Pack and version are listed in the dialog below. We're currently showing that we're using version 4.1 and Support Pack 3. Now, let's get right to our system. Let me make sure I'm logged in, which I am, so that's good. And I'll go ahead and open up a predefined report called Take Control. You can see from this document that there's one report called Take Control with input controls. So let's talk about what input controls are. They're a feature of Web Intelligence that provides a convenient way of filtering and analyzing report data. They're actually built using standard Windows controls such as list boxes, check boxes, combo boxes, radio buttons, and entry fields, and they are assigned to report elements such as blocks, section headers, we don't have any sections in this document, or to the entire report's contents. Selecting values in an input control filters the values in the associated report element. Input controls can also be used for WhatIf Analysis. For example, if a variable that is used in a formula can be assigned to a slider input control. So this is new in version 4.1. Changing the variable with the control allows you to examine the effects of different variable values on the formula result. And we'll take a look at that toward the end of this demonstration. Webi's input controls were introduced in version 3.1 Service Pack 2. And many users miss the flexibility these controls provide. They actually are a best practice over prompted query filters in that all data can be read into the report at one time, and input controls then control what is shown in the different tables and charts without having to rerun the different queries, such as by hitting the refresh button or rerunning individual queries through the refresh button under data access. This is especially useful when the underlying data source is a BEX query, a data source created using SAP's Business Warehouse. In our sample report, we've created a simple query, and that query, if we were to take a look at it, has a few objects: year, state, and sale revenue. And when we run the query, it really doesn't take too long to load the data. We've created 3 separate tables and charts. So as you can see, we have one table which is grouped or broken by state, showing the various years and the various sale revenue. We have another table which shows just the years and the sale revenue, not broken out by state. And finally, we have a chart which lists the various states and their respective sale revenue over the entire 3-year time period. Now let's create an input control on the year, allowing the user to choose 1 year or all years. If we go to the Analysis tab, the Filters sub-tab, and then click the down arrow next to Input Controls, we can see that there's the option to define control. Another way is to go to the left navigation panel and click the third button down, which is the Input Controls Management button, and choose New. Either way, it launches the Define Input Control window. The first step is to select the object to use for filtering data with the input control. In this case, select Year, and then select Next. The next decision is whether we want to restrict the selection to a single value or multiple ones. There are different controls for each choice. They're grouped by single value or multiple values. For this example, we'll select Combo Box. Once we select a control, the right panel shows the properties associated with that control. Note that the different types of controls have properties that are both identical and in some cases different as well. So for example, radio buttons has an additional property, which is the number of lines of text or radio buttons you'd like to display, whereas a combo box provides drop-down functionality, so the number of lines is really not relevant. A new property is introduced with version 4.1 Support Pack 3 is the ability to suppress all values. You'll notice the selection option here, which can be checked or unchecked. In Support Pack 3, it's an option that is on or yes by default to make the control work as previously implemented. When not enabled, yes is not checked, the user will not be able to select all the values for a single value control. In this example, we'd only be able to select individual years, 2004, 2005, or 2006, but not all years. For multiple value controls, the user could select all values, but must do so by actually selecting everything in the list of values manually. Also, when all values is not enabled, at least one default value must be selected to create the control. The other important property to select is the operator. Depending on the type of single value control selected, you may choose equal to, not equal to exclude the selection, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. The last step is to determine what tables or charts are to be filtered by this input control. So first, let's make sure that we've allowed for the selection of all values, and we'll click on the Next button. And we'll apply Year to the two vertical blocks, vertical block 1 and vertical block 2, but not the chart. And then we'll click Finish to enable the input control and to create it. Let me scroll over just a little bit here. Note that the initial setting is set to all values. When we drop down the combo box, we see all 3 years values. Well, we see all 3 years values in the table, 2004, 2005, 2006. And if we select one of the years, such as 2004, the table dynamically updates. In fact, both of these tables dynamically updated to show just 2004's data. Let me select 2005, and then let me select 2006, and then I'll go back to all values. And please note that each time we make a change to the input control, we are not refreshing the data from the database, simply dynamically filtering what the user can see. Let's create a new input control based on the state dimension. I'll use the Analysis Filters and Input Controls option to choose the menu selection Define Control and select State. And we'll go to the next step. We'll select checkboxes to allow multiple values to be selected and turn off the Allow selection of all values. You'll note the red arrow icon at the bottom of the window, indicating the default value must be selected. Click the small ellipsis or the 3 dots next to the default values property. This displays a dialog showing some sample values that you can choose from, and we'll select California, New York, and Texas as the default values, meaning that the user doesn't need to interact with the input control immediately to select states at least these three states will be previously selected. Since this control allows selection of multiple values, we can select multiple values, and that's what allowed us to select California, New York, and Texas. Let's move to the next step, and we'll select page body, meaning that anything on the page will be impacted by the filtering of this input control. Then we'll click Finish to implement this new control. So you'll note that we have all 3 years, and we have California, New York, and Texas selected by default. If we scroll down, we'll see California, New York, and Texas both in the table and in the chart as well. Note that as opposed to the year input control that has the all value selection, there is no all value selection in the state input control. We can remove these states, we can add others, and so on. What is interesting, however, is that when there is no all values shown as a choice, and we still can check all the choices in the list, it will not show all the states. Let me illustrate by selecting Colorado, District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois. The only state not shown is Massachusetts. If we go down through the list, we'll see California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, New York, and Texas. Now let me select Massachusetts. Even though Massachusetts is selected, it does not appear in the vertical table, and it does not appear in the chart. If I were to unselect Texas, then Massachusetts shows up on the chart, it shows up in the vertical table. But Texas is, of course, deselected. Were I to reselect Texas, Texas does not appear in either the vertical table or, if I scroll up, in the chart as well. So without the all values option, it really is not possible to select all values simultaneously. Now, first of all, what happens if you need to make a change to an input control? Using the Input Controls Manager, we can hover over the name of the input control, such as hovering over state, and we'll see a number of small icons. The wrench allows us to open the Edit Input Control dialog, and this allows us to change a variety of properties. The next icon, if I cancel out of this dialog and hover over state again, is the Show Dependencies. Show Dependencies physically shows us what is dependent upon this input control in the body of the document. The last icon is the Remove icon, and that would allow us to remove the input control permanently. The only thing you cannot change is the data object that is the basis of the control, such as state, year, and so on. If you needed to do that, you must delete the entire control and create a new one. Now, we had talked about using input controls to perform some WhatIf analysis. And I'm going to display the available objects. Within the available objects, I've created a dimension variable called growth, and I've set its formula to equal numeric value. Note that in order for this input control, which is called a slider, to be associated with this variable, which I'd like to be able to use to perform some WhatIf analysis on the growth of revenue, I need to make sure that this qualification for this variable is dimension and not measure. I've incorporated the numeric value of growth into another variable, and if I edit that, I'll show you what that looks like. It's the sales revenue multiplied by 1 plus growth divided by 100. In other words, growth now becomes a percentage value, and adding 1 to it means I'd like to see the original sales value, the actual sales value, plus whatever growth has occurred in percentage terms. So, what would this look like on the chart? I can move sales revenue next year into the block containing sale revenue. I'll quickly format the data to appear as currency with no places after the decimal. And I can even summarize the information as well. So I'll use my analysis and sum function to quickly get a summary total. And we see right now with growth of 0, the sale revenue and the expected sale revenue for next year is identical. Going back to input controls, I'm going to ask for a new input control. I'll actually do it from analysis, filters, and input controls, and I'll ask for a simple slider. The slider will be based on the variable called growth, and I'll choose next. There's a number of values that need to be entered into the property dialog before I can continue. Choose the expected amount of growth for next year as a %. Make sure to click OK. The minimum value would actually allow for some negative growth, so I'll choose -10. The maximum value I might anticipate is 25%. I'll increment by 1%. The default value will be an expected 5% of growth. I'm going to set the operator to equal to, because I want the value of this variable to be equal to that particular 5%, greater or less as well. Now, the input control in this case is not associated with a report element such as a section or block or page, etc. It's associated with the variable itself. And you'll note that when I finished, in the input controls area, we now have the new input control. Give me a good opportunity to use my edit capability to go back and to illustrate one thing, that after I've entered a value, I'll need to click on a different cell in order to confirm that value. So there's my default value of 0. This should be saying 0, but let's go ahead and refresh the data anyway. Now, by making changes to the input control, we'll actually see this block containing the sale revenue next year dynamically increase or decrease. If we set the growth back to 0, we can see the two values are consistent. If we called for a growth rate of 5% next year, we can see that the value over 5.896 million becomes 6.191 million, and so forth. And if we were to then turn this into a column chart, and we'll move this subsequent column chart down so as to not interfere with this column chart, we can actually see that we have dynamic charting going on. So we can start to determine what is an acceptable rate of growth or what might be a desired rate of growth. Very good. One last new feature with version 4.1 Support Back 3 is that input controls are now copied over to a new report when an existing report is copied or duplicated. In other words, if I were to right-click and choose Duplicate Report, I now have a new report with a similar name, and you'll note that the input controls operate identically on this new document as well as on, on this new report as well as on the original report. So in previous releases, the input controls would have had to have been created again on the copy. Well, thank you again for your attendance at this version of Webi Wednesdays, number 7, Take Control of Input Controls. In fact, this is our last Webi Wednesday, and it'll be followed up soon by Technology Tuesdays. We'd love for you to learn more about web intelligence and all the SAP BI 4.1 platform tools, and we've got just the solution for your learning needs. A series of interactive classes held at our public locations in Philadelphia, King of Prussia actually, and New York City, as well as partner locations throughout North America and throughout the world. If attending class isn't convenient, we have virtual delivery of classes held at your desktop, wherever that may be. And we also have e-learning subscriptions and the Learning Hub from SAP as well. Now, coming up in June 23rd and 24th, we have the Webi 4.1 class in King of Prussia, and any student who attends will receive a ticket to the Phillies to join us for a night out on June 24th at a Phillies game. So that'll be kind of fun. If you can't attend the class, make sure you visit cne.com/Webi to enter for a chance to wear a pair of Phillies tickets to that very same game. And if you visit cne.com/Webi, you're also going to find the entire collection of Webi Wednesdays. We really appreciate you staying with us for this presentation and look forward to great interaction with you in class or at a future event. Thank you and have a great day.